Hi everyone and welcome or welcome back to Jessie Kate Creates. I'm Jessica and today I'm going to show you how I made an encouragement card using some backgrounds from my stash. So this is a stack of watercolor backgrounds that is just in my stash. These are from projects that I started but never finished. Some are just from me playing around with inks and watercolors. Some of these are from a large custom card order and they're just some of the leftover backgrounds we didn't end up using. Some of these are just from, me having extra ink on my desk and I didn't want to wipe it up, so I just smushed it on paper. Or sometimes I was just experimenting with different color combinations. But these are the two panels I'm going to use today. They're kind of greeny blue watercolor backgrounds, and I made these using distress inks. I just kind of dropped the water onto the paper and added in ink. So I got these little pools of ink, and then I would let those dry. And then I just kept repeating that process. So I got this really cool layered texture with all of these edges. Now, since I'm making encouragement cards, I'm using probably one of my favorite stamp sets for encouragement cards. This is from the Ton and it's called The New Pretty. I really enjoy these sentiments, especially that you're allowed to scream, you're allowed to cry, but don't give up. I think we've all had points in our lives where we needed to hear that or we needed someone to say it to us. So I wanted to put it on a card. So I have a stitched rectangular die from my stash, and I'm just kind of trying to get an idea for maybe how I want to position the stamp and the portion of the background that I want to use. So once I figure that out, I tape it down. And just a little tip, when you run a square or a rectangle through your die cutting machine, don't run it straight on. Turn it at a little bit of an angle and you'll find it'll run through your machine smoother with less resistance. So you see how that's just slightly angled? That's what you want. So off camera, I went ahead and die cut that, and I have the panel we'll use for the card. And with the scrap, we're going to use that to decorate the inside of the card. So don't throw it away. Definitely keep that. Now I have to decide, do I want to put this on a white card base or a black card base? So I'm just kind of comparing both of those to see what I like. Since I really want the sentiment to stand out the most on this card, I like how impactful the black card base is, so that's what I'm going to go with. And like I said, I really want the sentiment to be the star of the show. So I decided to go with the landscape card because I feel it gives the sentiment more breathing room. So next we're going to do some heat embossing. I am using a stamp positioner since I'm stamping on watercolored paper, which is really textured, so it can be hard to get a good impression the first time. So by using this stamping tool, I can stamp it down multiple times and know I have a good impression. So I'm treating my watercolor paper with my handy dandy baby powder, since we're going to be doing heat embossing. And then I am using Versamark ink to stamp the sentiment. You can use any sticky ink for this, so whatever embossing ink or sticky ink you have in your stash, go ahead and use that. Versamark is what I happen to have, and I am going to stamp it down twice so that I get a really good impression. I'm sorry for how wobbly my camera is, guys. Thanks for bearing with me on that. So next we're going to add the embossing powder. I am using silver embossing powder from Recollections. You can use whatever you have in your stash. This is just what I happen to have on hand. So I'm sprinkling that over a coffee filter. And I'm going to be honest, this is some older footage. I usually don't use coffee filters. I usually just use like whatever computer paper or scrap paper is nearby, and that does the trick. But totally, if you have coffee filters, use those too. So I just used a dry paintbrush to dust off any excess powder. There wasn't much though, since we treated that paper before we did our stamping. Now I'm gonna funnel that back into the bottle just because I've had one too many incidents where I don't do that right away and then I get powder everywhere, which is not very fun. Okay, so now we're gonna bring in the heat tool. While I was doing my stamping, I had my heat tool getting really hot off camera. So now I'm gonna heat the paper from the back to warm it up, and then I'm gonna switch to melting it on the front. And I just love like watching heat powder or embossing powder transform. That's probably one of my favorite things about doing heat embossing. And by letting my heat gun get good and hot off camera, it means there's going to be minimal warping to my panel. So with that done, I'm going to set it aside and move on to the inside of the card. So I have my little piece of scrap paper, and I want to use the long edge of my scrap, which is pretty thin. So I'm seeing if I can get 2 pieces out of it, and I think if I cut it down to 1/4 of an inch, I can. So I'm going to cut that off camera, and then I'll bring back in my 2 strips. I'll bring in my black card base, and I have a panel of cardstock that is 4 1/4. Or I'm sorry, no, it's 4 by 5 1/4. That way I don't have to use a gel pen when I write on this card because I'll have that white background. But since my watercolor paper is pretty thick, I decide that instead of just layering it on top, I want to inlay it. So I went ahead and cut out an extra 1/4 inch, and I'm making sure that it fits, and it does. So now I'm going to trim that down to be 5 1/4 inches long, and then I'll adhere everything on the inside of the card. Now, I love making encouragement cards because I find they're probably what I send out the most to friends and family. I mean, of course, throughout the year, I will send birthday cards and holiday cards or special occasion cards. But encouragement cards just seem to be what I send the most. I feel like we can all use words of support and encouragement, whether we're going through something small, like, I don't know, maybe you have an exam coming up or you're being looked at for a promotion, or maybe you've had a really difficult event in your family or your relationship. Whatever it is, we can all use words of encouragement and support. So those are what I find I tend to send the most, but I'm curious, what type of cards do you send the most to your family and friends? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. I think that's also why I love this stamp set from the Ton so much, because so many of those sentiments can work for various occasions and various kinds of support. Okay, so now that those are glued down, that completes the inside of the card, so we're going to finish the front. I'm just taking foam tape and using it to completely cover the back of my panel. And then I'm going to tape my card shut. And I'm going to take my time here, you guys, to position the panel on top of the card base. Since I have foam tape on the back of that, I'm only going to lightly tack it down. I'm not pressing until I know I have it where I like it. And then I'll go ahead and press down, because once you press down foam tape, it's not budging. Okay, and just like that, our card is finished. So here is the front of the card and that matching inside with that little strip of scrap. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.